All right, let's talk about basting for a minute. So we've done the part of our quilt where we make the quilt top. And that's just, this is called, this is called the quilt top. It's the part that you piece together and sew, but it's obviously not a quilt yet. To do that, you have to turn it into a quilt sandwich, which is the quilt top and then the batting and then the backing. Or just the quilt top and then maybe a fuzzy backing, if you want to do it that way. At the very least for this, you need some tape and you need some pins. These are basting pins. They're just bent safety pins. It makes it easier to, pin it and get things how you want it. So you can use tape to tape down the backing, but what I really like to use are these little clamps, and you can see they've got a spring in them, and so you can just clamp it down instead of having to tape it down, and it just saves you a little time. But for a long time I just used tape. You can also get this basting spray. I've never just used basting spray alone, but if I'm using a fuzzy backing, I'll usually put some basting spray on as well, just to make sure that it'll stay. It's just like a little bit of glue that you can sew through. Don't use any kind of like normal adhesive spray because it'll gum up your sewing machine and make a big mess. And the last thing before we start basting is that I want you to think about where you're going to do the quilting. Quilting is a term we use for, the whole hobby of making a quilt, but it's also a term we use for when we sew the quilt sandwich together. So for instance, I could do my quilting right along all of these edges so that it's cross-hatched. But for this quilt, I'm going to do it diagonally through these light blue colored squares. So if this was my first quilt, I would want to draw those lines before I start. So I'm going to go ahead and lay my ruler here and just draw a line diagonally through all of these squares. Okay, and it's nice to draw that before you baste it so that you can put your pins around the lines and not have them, if I put a basting pin right here, then I'm going to have to take that pin out before I can sew through it. But if I have this line here, then I'll just know to kind of avoid the places that I'm going to be quilting. Also, since I'm starting on the edge here, I don't want to try to hit this very edge of the point. I want to hit a 1/4 inch inwards. So I don't know if that makes sense. When we attach the binding on, we're going to have a 1/4 inch seam here. So the corner of this square won't be all the way at the edge, it'll be a 1/4 inch in. So as I'm drawing these quilting lines, I'm not going to be drawing them to go to the very edge. I'm going to be drawing them to go to right here, which is where the edge of my blanket will be after I attach the binding. All right, so you can go ahead and continue drawing those lines. Make sure you use some kind of a fabric marker, something that will wash off very easily, because if you use pencil, then it might not come off all the way, and that could be really annoying. All right, so let's get started. You're going to go ahead and take your backing. I'm using a minky backing. When you lay it out, if you're using something like minky, be sure you don't stretch it. But if you're using something like cotton, you can lay it out and kind of give it a little bit of a stretch, but while you're taping it, I'll show you what I mean. So I'm going to get my first clamp and I'm going to put it up here. Just make sure that it's nice and laid out flat. I'm going to put one clamp there. Now I'm going to put one clamp in the middle. And I'm using my kitchen table, but you don't have to use your kitchen table. You could use a floor, just any clean surface. I'm going to show you, if I didn't have clamps, I'd want to be using this tape. I like masking tape, but really just anything that will keep it, secured to the floor. So if I were doing that, then I would just take this and tape it. Now this is what I meant. If you're using cotton, a cotton backing, you can kind of pull gently and then tape it. But since I'm using a minky backing, I'm not gonna pull it at all. I'm just gonna have it be not stretched, but not bunched up. All right, if you're using batting, go ahead and grab that. And you're gonna lay it out just on top of your backing. Let's see, I wanna make sure that the long sides are the same. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and reclamp these middle pieces where the batting is going over the top of the clamp. You just want to start in the center with this and spread out towards the edges. Just making sure everything is nice and smooth. And if you want to use basting spray, now is when I would use it. I think mine's almost out. But you just spray where your quilt's gonna go. Now that means that that's sticky. So this would really work best with 2 people, but I never have 2 people when I'm doing it. If you get 2 people and just gently set this quilt on top, I usually end up kind of adjusting it a few times. Although it'd be ideal if you just set it down once and it was right where you wanted it. All right, now you're gonna start in the center and just start smoothing out your quilt top. So that everything is nice and even. Okay. Now it's time for pinning. So go ahead and grab your basting pins. And you want to pin them about at least 5 inches apart. So I like to put in more pins than less pins, if that makes sense. I would rather do a few more pins and have everything be nice and flat while I'm sewing and quilting it. So for this, I'm gonna go ahead and put a pin on the edge of each of the gray squares like this. And that way, when I go to quilt my X's through these blue lines, I think I won't have to take out the pins so that I can quilt there. So now you're just gonna go ahead and keep going all the way around the quilt, pinning as you go. Now, if this just sounds like terrible to you and you're like, I can't imagine doing that, that sounds so laborious. There is a thing called, what is it called? It's a type of batting that has some like basting glue in the batting. And so you could ask for it at a fabric store. I don't know that they'd have it somewhere like a Walmart, but Joann's or Hancock. You can ask for the batting that is a basting kind of batting. And so in that case, you would make your quilt sandwich and then you just iron it, and that makes the glue work. And then you can bring it to your quilting and to your sewing machine from there. I haven't used that just because it's a little more expensive and I don't really mind doing this step. All right, so go ahead and baste your quilt and then we'll meet back here. I just have to tell you that I kind of take it back. I think 4 on each square was a little much. I've started just doing 1 on the top and the bottom of each square. So I'm going to do 1 right here and then 1 right here. Here and here, here and here. And that should be sufficient. All right, now I've got all of my basting pins in. And before you bring it up to start your quilting, what I want you to do is just cut around the quilt top. Leave some space, but probably 4 to 5 inches. It's nice to kind of get rid of the backing and batting that you don't need, because it's easier when you're quilting, whether you decide to quilt on a machine or hand quilt. So you'll just cut all around the edge of your quilt top. Again, just 4 or 5 inches.